All right, if you haven't already, please introduce yourself in the chat, who you are, where you're from. One thing bringing you joy this week. This is our final webinar of 2025. We're so glad to be with all of you. Just thanks for being here. This is a great chance to do it. We are going to spend some time today talking about a really broad overview of what to expect in 2026. There's so much going on. There'll be a little bit less sort of like templates and send exactly this email today. We're just going to really give you a full lens on what to expect in the coming year. And we actually have a really fun webinar to announce to kick off next year that we'll get to later with an extremely special guest. So that's very exciting for us. But let's dive right in if you don't mind. So before we get started, a recording and the slides will be shared with you after the session. Again, someone will still ask, so please uh, let them know in the comments when we get to that. This event is approved for 1.0 CFRE credits. A lot of you have gotten your CFRE in 2025, partly because you've come to a lot of these. So thank you so much. Congratulations to you. At the end of the session, we will have a survey and you can confirm your attendance there. And then, of course, if you have any questions along the way, just put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A and we'll address as many as we can. But of course, we will not get to all of them. So thank you so much for joining. Here's the agenda for today. We'll do some very quick intros. We'll take a look back at 2025 before we sort of kick into 2026. We'll just take a quick moment to reflect on what is quite a year. We'll talk about some of the biggest fundraising trends shaping 2026, and there are some really big ones. And we'll talk about some specific steps to take for a remarkable year. So glad to have you all here. Really excited about this. So some very quick introductions. My name is Patrick. I'm lucky to be the co-founder and co-CEO of FreeWill, alongside my wonderful co-founder Jenny. I am in what is now sunny and snowy Brooklyn, New York. It's still a white, all white outside, and just beautiful. My wonderful co-founder Jenny's out in Seattle, where I assume it is not snowing at the moment, but someone can confirm. And we get to run FreeWill, which is a real blessing in our lives. So FreeWill is the biggest estate planning and plan giving solution in the United States, now trusted by more than 2,300 leading nonprofits, including many of you. So I will say an extra special end of year thank you to all of the FreeWill partners we have, and ranging from the American Diabetes Association to the United Way and Greenpeace and Amnesty and so many others, as well as many smaller organizations and many houses of worship, museums, zoos, libraries, colleges, hospitals, boys and girls clubs, habitats, so on and so forth. So very, very exciting. And of course, the work that you're seeing here and some of the research you're doing and all the work behind FreeWill is a huge team effort of about 230 people with more than 6 centuries of combined fundraising experience. And we're just really fortunate to do that. Okay, we're going to give away a book and then we're going to get right into it. One of my very favorite books this year that I read, we gave away my favorite nonfiction book of the year last week, I think. Um, I would say this is top 4 on my fiction list this year. I really liked Angle of Repose, which is a older one, and some others as well. But some of you have read this already. James by Percival Everett is a fascinating nonfiction book. It's a really fun reimagination of the tales of Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer from Jim's perspective, the character in Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer. And it's just very thoughtful. And I will tell you this, the first 20 pages, not that great. I really pushed through and it was incredible. So if you win this, don't give up in the first 10 minutes. Didn't love the start. Got into it a lot lately. So anyway, at the end of the session, we'll drop a survey in the chat and you can make a note of that and treat this as a Christmas, Hanukkah, etc. gift to you all. Um, how is your week going? All right. So generally, we are having the best week we've had all year. That is great news. Look at that. So exciting. So glad you all are doing so well. So very, very exciting there. Look at that. Also, how confident we are the most confident we have been the entirety of 2025. We are ending on a high note. Congratulations to all of you. Last week we checked in to see how your Giving Tuesday went. For many of you, it went much better than last year. And last year was a pretty good year. Remember, last year was a record-breaking giving year. So just great freaking job. We've done a really excellent job as a sector, and I hope you all are feeling great. Um, so, um, Congratulations. Okay, 2025. This was a year. This was a challenging year in the nonprofit sector, and yet we still did a pretty great job. So let's take a quick look. January 7th, we're kicking off the year. Brave new year. Anything can happen. January 7th, LA experiences the most destructive wildfires in its history. January 19th, TikTok is banned. This lasts for less than one day. January 20th, Donald Trump is inaugurated as the 47th president. He establishes the Department of Government Efficiency and names Elon Musk as a special government employee. Some of you remember this. February 9th, the Philadelphia Eagles denied the Kansas City Chiefs a three-peat in Super Bowl. Oof. I think that means 59. Is that right? 59. We're going to go with 59. March 18th, NASA astronauts stranded in space for 286 days finally return home. Congratulations to the Eagles. April 2nd, President Trump declares Liberation Day, issues a sweeping trade tariffs on many countries, including a 10% baseline tariffs for all imports. Stock market plunges 12.4% almost immediately. It's the biggest drop since the COVID-19 pandemic. We did a whole session on how to prepare for a recession economically right after this in order to help you out. Turned out to be not quite a recession. April 14th, remember the Blue Origin space mission? That was this year. That was like 8 months ago. That's pretty wild. April 21st, Pope Francis, again, that was this year. It feels like many years ago. Head of the Catholic Church since 2013, dies at the ripe old age of 88. April 28th, following Justin Trudeau's resignation, former governor of the Bank of Canada, Mark Carney, becomes the new PM of Canada. May 8th, Pope Leo the 14th becomes the first American pope and the first White Sox fan to be a pope, one might assume. June 24th, Giving USA 2025 report shows charitable giving up 6.3% in 2024, topping $592.5 billion nationwide. So we all did a pretty good job in 2024 together. I cannot believe that Pope Leo was only in May. July 1st, USAID officially shuts down. July 4th, the one big beautiful bill is signed into law, representing the first major tax reform since the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. This is the most important legislation affecting charitable giving in a long time, basically since 2017. We'll talk more about that in a moment. August, Make a Will Month. Those of you in plan giving had an incredible month, more than 600 or nearly $600 million in plan gifts documented. And so there'll be more than that coming in. September 30th, OpenAI launches Sora 2, a text-to-video AI model that creates hyper-real videos in seconds. This was really just incredibly impressive and sort of shows some of the just incredible leaps forward in AI over the course of the year. Some of you just saw Time Magazine had AI and the builders of AI as the person of the year. October 19th, remember this? This is only a few months ago. This feels like quite a long time ago. The Louvre was robbed. November 12th, after 43 days, the longest shutdown in federal history, in US history, comes to an end. December 2nd, Giving Tuesday breaks a lot of records. Nonprofits raised more than an estimated $4 billion. Great work. Great work. December 11th, the S&P 500 reaches a record high. It's up 13% year over year. It's the highest it's ever been in history, which has a lot of promising things for asset prices and for overall giving. That's where we are. And now, December 16th, right? Still 2025. Anything can happen. We've got 15 more days. We'll see. So apparently the Louvre is now shut down due to flooding as well as their staff being on strike. So it's been a year at the Louvre, let alone in the rest of the world. On a scale of 1 to 5, how confident are we looking into 2026? All right, before we get into this, deep breath. I mean, what a year. A hard one, a challenging one. Some wild things happened, right? Ranging from record fundraising to an American Pope to the end of USAID, a dramatic shift in private foundations, rise in non-cash gifts, a whole bunch of other stuff. And just thank you for being a part of it. And thank you for being part of this together. Just really meaningful. 2026, anything can happen. We'll talk about some very specific things that we think will happen. But of course, there's obviously a lot of unknowns. How confident are we in 2026? About 20% of folks are extremely confident, 40% are 4, 30% are 3, only 1% are 1, and then some small folks in the 2 range. So that's how people are feeling going into 2026. How do we expect donors to change their habits, if at all, right? Could be nothing. And you'll see here that people could select multiple things. So some of you are trying to figure out how does this add up to more than 100? You could add up, you could select more. Half of you say we expect more non-cash gifts, donor advised funds, stocks, QCDs. I think this is exactly right. And why this is true is something we'll dig into in a moment. 26% say you expect more recurring or multi-year gifts. 18% say expect fewer donors overall, but larger individual gifts. This, by the way, has been the long-term trend over the last 15 years. A quarter of you say we expect an increase in planned gifts. That's very likely to be true. Only 8% said no major changes, but a bunch of you said I'm not sure yet, right? So that gives you a sense of where people are. What is likely to shape 2026? Let's talk about 8 of the most important fundraising trends that will shape the year ahead. These are all very likely to be true, right? So we have very high confidence that these are all happening. First of all, the tax laws that will come into effect on January 1st of this year, right? It was signed by 2025, but a lot of the tax regime shows up in 2026. It takes place. This is the first year, and we will get a really good look in 26, what giving might look like in 27, 28, 29, 30, and beyond, right? So really, really helpful. This is the first meaningful piece of tax reform since the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which passed in 2017 and then took effect in 2018. So we have some backwards look at what happens when you change tax law overnight. There are several new provisions that we'll go into that all go into effect this year, and it extends some of the provisions that were previously legislated in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And those were set to expire at the end of this year. There's a bunch of reasons um, that American legislation often happens in chunks, and that tends to be in order to sort of circumvent the filibuster. We won't go into that too much, but that's what happened. Giving just got somewhat better for small donors, somewhat worse and somewhat more complex for major donors, right? So that's basically the headline. Let's dive in here. Some provisions apply this past year. Most of them are going to begin on January 1st. And looking to next year, donor education is going to be one of the most sought after skills and one of the most important elements for your fundraising program to develop. And it's something that we'll walk you through, not just right now, but obviously as the year goes on as well. There's a lot of ways that folks are changing, and your major donors are going to be sitting with their financial advisors, talking about all the different tax changes and how it might affect their giving, and you're going to want to really be on top of that. So we'll come back to tax changes in a moment. Trend 2, there is a widespread shift to comfort with AI, right? As of 2025, October this year, a couple months ago, 75% of you reported using some form of AI in your work. The first time we did a session on AI in March 2023, 11% of you said this. So in 2.5 years, we 7x increased the number of folks using it. According to the state of AI in nonprofits, 77% of orgs report expecting to use AI heavily within 5 years. AI tools have become a part of daily workflows, from grant writing to donor research to personalized outreach. And in 2026, the most successful teams will be those that leverage AI in order to spend more time building deep human relationships with donors, right? What we really want is sort of AI empowering humans as opposed to replacing humans. We want AI suggestions, we want human decisions, and we want to put human relationships at the forefront of our work in 2026. When we ask you again, if you use AI in any of your work, you can see how rapidly this shot up. The May to October jump is so interesting of 2024, just really big leaps forward. And look at March to July of 2023. I mean, just this is such a fast change in American life. We've talked about this to a great deal in the past, but this is the fastest adopted technology in the history of the world. I mean, it's just really, really interesting. Have you used it in your personal life? Again, sort of very similar, just rocket ship up across the board, right? One of the things I think this doesn't measure is how frequently you use it, right? So many of you are using ChatGPT daily. Some of you are using it multiple times a day. I would put myself on a 4 or 5 times a day basis right now. Trend number 3. Donor advised funds have been on a tear for the last 10 years, and that is about to accelerate. So when we look at this, right, there's brand new research coming out of the Donor Advised Fund Research Collaborative, which was released last week. This takes the place, by the way, of the NPT report that comes out annually. So NPT will no longer be doing a report. This replaces it. I'm actually surprised at how little attention this has gotten. The number of donor advised fund accounts grew 18% in 2024 to more than 3.5 million nationwide. This means roughly what, 1.3% of all US adults have one, but likely that your wealthiest donors on average. Donors contributed almost $90 billion into DAFs. It's a 37% increase from 2023. I mean, that's just an astonishing number, right? A lot of that is sort of overall adoption. A lot of it is the stock market, and so we expect these things to continue. Grants from donor advised funds, out of donor advised funds to nonprofits, reached 65 billion, up 20%, so another massive jump. We're going to see this go forward across the board. As stock market strength fuels both contributions and grants, donor advised funds will remain a major driver of giving in 2026. But it is also the case that the tax changes are going to heavily incentivize non-cash giving and donor advised fund giving. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but there is going to be a huge increase in donor advised funds. We're already at $65 billion a year coming into um, coming to nonprofits from donor advised funds. Just to give you a look at this across the board, um, right? You can see the number of donor advised fund accounts in 23 and 24. You can see total contributions. I mean, from going from 65 to 89 is astounding growth. And usually what happens is more money goes in one year and comes out the following year. So you're going to see 2025 is almost certainly going to be the largest year on all of these metrics for donor advised funds, but you should be getting a lot of grants at end of year from donor advised funds, as well as things like stock gifts and other things we'll talk more about in a moment. 2026, this is going to go up in a huge way. So 26, 27, make sure you have a donor advised fund plan in place and make sure that is part of a smart giving plan, not just donor advised funds, right? It's donor advised funds, it's stock, it's crypto if you have younger donors, it's qualified charitable distributions if you have older donors, it may be real estate, it may be some other things as well, right? Payout rate, 25%. So payout rate again for donor advised funds is astonishingly higher than it is for private foundations. And you can see the average DAF account is now $91,000. When we look at how much of this is a share of total charitable giving, you can see we're up to 23% of all individual giving and 15% of all giving, which includes foundations and it includes corporations, right? 23% of all individual giving is going to DAFs. I mean, this is just, it is so important. And if you're not with us on the sort of shift to smart giving, you make sure that you're really checking in because in 2026, this is going to be the continuation of a long-term trend, but one that is going to spike even more. Uh, Great. So you can see this, by the way, 24, 23, et cetera. So the last year, 2022 was the highest in terms of percentage of individual giving, slight dip in 23. It should expect to go back up in 25. Now, what else is happening? Well, the great wealth transfer is fully underway. One of the things about demographics is that we can predict them down to a T. The great wealth transfer, as we've mentioned before, is a once in a lifetime opportunity for nonprofits. An estimated $124 trillion will transition from baby boomers to younger generations, primarily Gen X and millennials, and to charities like yours. Many boomers are unprepared. Many of them don't have estate planning. Many of them have estate planning, but it's not up to date. So that will be really important. In the next 20, 25 years, we're really starting to get into it. A lot of folks have been telling me my plan gifts are the largest they've ever been, but they're the smallest they ever will be. So we're really seeing a shift here. Nonprofits have a unique chance now to help donors through plan giving. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But boomers are the wealthiest generation that's ever lived. In the next stat, some of you have seen, but if you haven't, it's going to astound you. 40 to 50% of all wealth in the United States is held by people over 70. Let me just say it again. 40 to 50% of all wealth in the United States is held by people over 70. What does this mean? It means these asset-based gifts. These people are not working, right? There's no income coming in. They own investments, they own real estate, they own IRAs, right? They own homes or home, right? Single. And where planned giving happens, it's all going to get distributed. It's so, so, so important. There are 5 reasons for this. We won't go into them too much, but it's just a bigger generation. It's just dramatically larger than the silent generation that precedes it. Social changes means we have more people working, right? So there's more people, but there are more women in the workforce. So there's a lot more people who've earned income in this generation compared to previous ones. They are the most educated up to date in history. Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z have surpassed them. Housing prices, right? So if you came in and you bought a house in 1970 and it was $30,000, God bless you, and now that house is worth $450,000 or twice that, there's a lot of asset wealth there. And then, of course, the economic market performance, right? So if you invested $2,000 in, 1960, you're doing great now. Um, it is not just folks passing away, though, right? Generally, we know that people are aging over time. You are, I am. The US population overall, though, age 65 grew by 13% between 2020 and 2024. I mean, look at 13% growth in just 4 years. Adults over 65 now outnumber children in 11 states, up from just 8 in 2020. What are those states? Maine, Vermont, Florida, Delaware, Hawaii, Montana, New Hampshire, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and West Virginia, right? So all of those states have more people, more retirees than they have children, which is really striking. In 2026, we will still be living in what we call peak 65. This means it is just an incredible retirement wave. There's a really interesting thing happening in the economy right now. The unemployment rate just ticked up a little bit, but not that much. What you're seeing is job losses, but no increase in the unemployment rate. How does that happen? What's happening is people are retiring and some of those jobs aren't being created. But it's a really interesting dynamic because you don't have as many people entering the workforce as you do leaving it. You can see here, I mean, this is not normal in history, right? So you can see how many folks are over 65 compared to the last 10 decades, and you can see what a percentage of the total population this is. All right. We've talked a lot about older donors. Let's just do a really quick check-in on where our generations are going to be in 2026. So first, the oldest generation that is still in any meaningful numbers is what we call the silent generation. These are folks born into the Great Depression and born into World War II. It's a much smaller population than baby boomers. In fact, something like 42, 43 million of these folks were born in the United States, compared to baby boomers where 71 million were born, or 78 million, I think, born 1946 and 1964. What's striking about baby boomers in 2026, that the oldest boomers are turning 80 this year. 80, right? 3 years above average life expectancy in the United States. 80. Generation X, born 1965 to 1981. Can you believe that the oldest Gen Xers are now 61? I mean, where have we gone? Millennials, the oldest millennials are now 45. There are no more 20-year-old millennials in the world. Sorry, all. Gen Z is almost 30. All right, sorry, I feel old. Maybe you feel old. But, Gen Z, I just feel like they used to be all children, and now there's just a handful of kids left. And Gen Z is almost 30. 2027, they'll be 30. That's crazy. So that's where we are. Look, you can see here in terms of who's actually in the United States. Look at how small the silent generation is. Now, obviously, some of that is that older folks pass away, um, but it's just a much tinier population. Look at the fact that baby boomers, despite being oldest ones almost 80, are still larger than Gen X, right? Gen X never gets to be the largest generation in the United States. Millennials now are, and they will be for the foreseeable future. Gen Z is smaller than millennials, right? And then Gen Alpha, why is that smaller? Well, there's only 10 years of Gen Alpha. So Gen Alpha continues to be born. But look at how massive the boomer population is compared to the silent generation. I mean, it's really striking. And remember that Gen X is not quite as big as boomers, even though more boomers have passed away, right? So really, really interesting stuff there. Okay, I just want to go back to this one more time. So just lock in how many folks are 46 to 64. More seniors, meaning people turning over 70 in this case, 70 and a half, are more seniors are reaching eligibility for QCDs as they reach 70 and a half. Many of these newly eligible donors will be unfamiliar with qualified charitable distributions, and they will need simple education on how they work. At the same time, older donors are going to start looking for new ways to reduce their tax burden as the standard deduction changes take effect. I don't know who was at the webinar last week. I was, obviously. And one of the panelists said that this year her QCDs had doubled compared to last year. Doubled. And many of you are seeing this. Let me know if we can just chime in if that's true for you as well. Starting in 2026, taxpayers over 65 are eligible for an additional $6,000 standard deduction through 2028, on top of what's already been true, right? That's on top of an existing deduction that is only for seniors, and the raises total deductions to 23,000 or 46,700, both 65 plus. So you can see how hard it is going to be as a senior, right? Unless you're a really wealthy person, to get into this itemization bracket, right? It means fewer seniors, especially in low tax states, will itemize, right? The way that most people, remember that seniors for the most part aren't paying the high mortgage interest that many of you are right now, because they're, if you own a home at 70, odds are you might have bought it at 35 and it's all paid off. So there's less itemization among seniors, especially in a place where I'm not paying a lot of capital gains tax, for instance, in California or New York or New Jersey. Um, Susan says, by this year, I mean 2026. Good question. So it's a really big deal. I mean, the shift in senior giving is an enormous component of 2026 in a way that not enough people are talking about. And as most of you know, most of your giving is from folks who are at least over 60. And for many of you, more than half of your giving is from people over 70. It's just it's sort of a season in life where you've accumulated wealth and now you're giving back. So just a really quick recap, most of you know this, but a QCD is a gift out of an IRA. It's called a qualified charitable distribution. It goes directly to a charity. It never touches my bank account. It means I never pay taxes on it. It's the only way to get out of paying taxes on IRA. Even if you pass away and pass your IRA on to a kid or a child, theoretically an adult child, and you're below the estate tax threshold, that adult child still pays taxes on it. So this is really important. You're going to see these shoot up next year, although they're already on their way up, right? So we're talking about accelerating trends. DAFs and QCDs are both accelerating trends. In 2026, taxpayers can make qualified charitable distributions of up to 111,000 from their IRAs. This is up from 108 in 2025 and up from 100, I think, the year before. So big, big gifts, big gifts. Ooh, Lori says she thinks the max for 2026 is 115. If anyone can fact check us on this, that would be great. Great question. If you're 73 or older, a QCD will also count towards your required minimum distribution. There is so much gosh darn money in IRAs. So as we think about QCDs and we think about getting money in this, there is more than nearly $18 trillion in Q2 um, in IRAs, right? And so if you think about this continuing to grow because the stock market has continued to grow over the last 6 months, we're looking at probably more than $18 trillion, capital T trillion in IRA accounts. And so these are a critical source of wealth. Now, what's happening here, right? The markets have gone up. And so when you're 73, government says you got to start taking money out, you got to pay taxes on it. You might think, I actually don't need that money as much as I thought I would because my investments have gone so well. And so this is a chance where people start really hunting for tax advantage ways to take care of it, and that often means giving to charity. All right, we're getting conflicting reports on 111 versus 115, but trust me that it's gone up, and we'll get back to this as well. All right, non-cash giving will drive bigger gifts. So only 2.3% of household wealth is in cash, 2.3, and yet everyone's just asking for $60 at a time. This is a colossal mistake, and it's really what separates some of the better charities from the less effective ones. With inflation squeezing household budgets, fewer donors have extra cash available for charitable giving. Through the new tax law, the universal cap for standard deduction donors weakens the incentive for donors to give cash. So a donor who is not itemizing can now give up to $1,000 in cash, but any additional cash gifts give them no tax benefit. And you might think, well, that's okay. Well, this person's not going to give me $1,000 anyway. They only give me 500, they give me 700, they give me 200. Well, guess what? For almost all of your donors, you are not the only place they are giving, right? Maybe in a couple of rare instances, but it means your actual cap might be $150, it might be $200, it might be $300. And anything after that offers no benefit to the donor, which is why donors are going to start to hunt for these more valuable ways to give. We just talked about QCDs. That is a no-brainer for senior citizens, right? Folks over 70 and a half. Qualified charitable distributions, also things like stock, right? You get that, you avoid those capital gains. You also get tax benefits from it. Even for non-itemizers, very, very helpful as well. So when we ask you what types of gifts do you expect to focus on in 2026, you can see the two things I just talked about, right? The donor advised funds and QCDs. And I really want these to go hand in hand as you're thinking about marketing them, right? Don't just talk about one, talk about these, talk about stock gifts. Stock gifts are undervalued. We just talked about $90 billion going to donor advised funds. Well, guess what? Most of that stock going to donor advised funds because the donor advised funds are better than you are at asking for and accepting stock. And so if I had one holiday wish for you all, it would be get better at asking for stock gifts so it can go straight to you and not to a donor advised fund first. Really, really important. Cryptocurrency zero, look, I don't think it's an area of focus for almost everybody. It doesn't mean don't have it. Having it is a good signal to younger donors that that you're part of it, but it's not going to be, it's not going to matter compared to these other ones. Okay. As cash becomes more costly for donors and nonprofits, this becomes an attractive solution. Of course, Dr. Russell James notes that organizations that attract non-cash gifts grow 6 times faster than others. This is really, really big deal. By encouraging donors to consider non-cash assets, we can expand their perception of wealth and help them give a lot more. One of the panelists last week said that a donor of hers recently transitioned from giving $10,000 a year to giving $90,000 a year. What was the difference? Was she so much more compelling? Did you take him on the best tour of his life? No. She changed the way he gave from cash to stock and went from 10 to $90,000. That's a $1.8 million organization. $80,000 gifts is an $80,000 difference is enormous. Enormous. So let's make sure we get on that. Average QCD gift 3,800. Average stock gift 11,000. DAF gifts 3,000. Crypto gifts 6,000. Cash gift 100. Right? Stop asking for cash when you could be getting some of these larger gifts. It's really, really, really important. Okay. Holy cow. 2026. It's an election year again. It's happening quickly. Can't believe we do this every 2 years in America. Um, Midterm primaries beginning in March, right? It is 4 months, less than 3 months, less than 3 months, less than 4 months um, from, no, less than 3 months, excuse me, from the first primaries of 2026, right? A record wave of political retirements, especially on the Republican side in the House, is creating open seats nationwide. It's fueling crowded competitive races. It is a genuine question of the Senate and the House control. It could go either way. I think the House is a little bit more likely to be in Democratic control. The Senate is a little bit more likely to be in Republican control, but it is a long year with lots of surprises. Anything can happen. It's going to get busy. These are also projected to be the most expensive in history, with $11 billion expected to be spent on ads and other things. You are going to get a lot of mail. You're going to get a lot of text messages. You're going to get a lot of email. You're going to see, if you watch the news or if you watch broadcast television, you are going to get inundated with ads starting soon. It's crazy. Primary season runs from March to September. 16 states are voting in June alone. Alone. Marjorie Fine says, Patrick used to be big on crypto. What happened? I still think that crypto is a great avenue of giving. I just think that the explosion of donor advised funds and qualified charitable distributions are so important that I wouldn't want you to focus on crypto at the expense of those. Great question. Okay, where are we going to see a just flood of absolute endless money? Georgia. Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, New Hampshire, North Carolina, maybe Texas. Texas is a fascinating state this year. Ken Paxton is running a primary campaign against sitting Senator John Cornyn. Ken Paxton, bless his heart, scandal ridden to the nth degree, and actually is one of the Republican candidates that could put the Senate seat in play for Democrats, in which case, boy, you're going to have an incredibly expensive election, right? I mean, Texas is the largest, could be the largest competitive state we've had in a long time in terms of Senate. While I actually was talking to Chuck Schumer about this the other day, and who's sitting Senate minority leader for those of you, but in charge of recruiting and winning a bunch of great Senate candidates, and they think that Mississippi is an outside chance, and I think that's a pipe dream. But I'm just going to relay that information. Really interesting stuff there. North Carolina, North Carolina is probably going to be the tightest race. I would expect a ton of effort there. Bunch of competitive gubernatorial races: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin. You know what? There's going to be a fascinating competitive gubernatorial race, which is not here, which is an open seat primary in California. So the primary is going to really matter in California, but it's almost certainly going to be held by a Democrat in California. But there's going to be a ton of spending in the lead up there. That is a massively wide open race. Campaign messaging will dominate the news cycle, our inbox, and social media throughout 2026. It'll be even more challenging to cut through the noise and capture donor attention. So we'll come back to this in a moment, but I have a couple of tips on how to break through during campaign season. We asked about private foundations. Fortunately, we have information to share here. Private foundations giving increase this year in an effort to offset federal funding cuts. Prominent funders increased their payout rates and pledged additional funding. And they got a bucket more money this year, right? 10.3% in 2024 alone, right? The S&P up 13%. So even though they're giving out, they still ended the year with more money than they started. And that's expanded capacity for grant making. This is a great year to expand your work in private foundations. So check that out. All right, let's talk about some actual steps here, right? What do we actually do? First things first, right? Many of the core fundraising best practices that were true last year and were true 10 years ago are still true today. What are those? Work on these transformational plan gifts, right? The people that gave you $20 a month could leave you plan gifts of $500,000. Two, leverage your non-cash gifts. The research from Dr. James is a decade old almost, but it is proven true repeatedly. Steward your major donors, right? This is incredibly important. There's not enough stewardship happening. We'll probably do a session on really excellent stewardship down the line a little bit. But we also know that new opportunities are likely to appear and often suddenly. So we'll talk about how to take advantage of those as well. Step one, it's teaching time, right? There are some really big tax changes. We have to talk about them. We have to help our donors find the avenues because they might just get a headline that says, "Oh, if I don't give 0.5% of my income away, I'm getting no tax benefit." Hey, that's true. Let's talk about some ways that actually give you even more tax benefit than you got in 2025. And we got to start having those conversations early. Early 26, major tax shifts, a lot of conversation between donors and their financial advisors, a lot of conversation between donors and themselves, a lot of confusion. This is your time to shine, right? Education, really key. You want to equip your team to explain what's changing and get ahead of donor confusion so as to not to impede future giving. At the end of the session, we are going to share a downloadable resource with you at the end of the webinar to make these conversations easier. So we'll share that with you and make sure you have that going in across the board. Tax day falls on April 15th. So the months leading up to it are prime time for highlighting some of these tax smart options, right? DAOs, QCDs, crypto, stock, etc. Right? So this is a really good time to have these conversations. Tax people are going to be a little bit more in tune this tax season, but really more next tax season because things are going to change a little bit, right? But they're starting to take a look at their full financial picture. They're starting to think about what this might look like in the future. These conversations add real value as donors look for ways to maximize tax savings. I have a magic sentence for you, right? I don't think this is in the presentation, so I just want you to listen for a moment. When you talk about these changes, you talk about different ways of giving. When you say something like, this will be valuable for you to in any of your giving, whether it's to our organization or elsewhere, suddenly it creates a lot of receptivity for donors instead of it doesn't feel like you're just asking for more money, right? So the more that you can say, this might be helpful to you in any of your giving, it's going to be heard a lot better. So try that on for size early this year. Step three, confirming your planned giving strategy. Planned giving remains one of the most reliable funding sources. It is only going up, right? Demographics are on your side. As more boomers finalize their estate plans, we are extremely bullish on planned giving in 2026. Remember, the Great Wealth Transfer is underway and 124 trillion is expected to move. Now is the time to solidify your legacy program and make sure your organization has a clear plan in place for 2026. If you don't have a plan giving plan in place, this is your year. If you have one, but it's just sort of dusty and sits in a closet, this is your year to amplify that. We'll talk about some very specific calendar moments to amplify that on. But this is the year, right? This is the year. It's easy to lose focus and put plan giving on the back burner. We recommend a couple of times a year at some very specific moments with some very specific messaging. We'll talk about what that looks like. Boomers are entering their prime estate planning years. Again, the oldest boomers are 81 next year. The youngest boomers will have reached retirement age. Planned giving could be the largest source of giving among your small dollar donors over the next 10 years. I mean, there's just incredible wealth sitting in assets and real estate, and planned giving is the route to that. Bonus, when someone includes your charity in their estate plan, the annual giving to your nonprofit goes up by 75% in the following year, right? So must do. Just let me just walk you through this calendar for a moment, and we'll send the slides around a little bit later so you have this. The blue is great time to talk about plan giving. The red hearts is great time to talk about tax advantage smart giving, like donor advised funds and stocks and QCDs. New Year's resolution, people are getting their affairs in order, right? So early in the year, great chance to talk about plan giving. We're not asking for anything right now. We're reminding people of getting their affairs in order. Tax season, great chance to talk about smart gifts. Usually, spring can be an excellent time to talk about plan giving. We see a lot of giving there. Summer educational campaign, right? So in the sort of slowness of summer, it's a great time to start to talk about what are some ways you might want to think about giving, especially later in the year. We have seen in our research that the more people talk about things like QCDs early, the more QCDs they get in December, right? It's not mere, you can't start asking in December and November and expect it's all going to happen. We have to start this education earlier. Blue, plan giving. Red, sort of smart giving, right? Real-time asset-based giving. August, make a will month. Big circle on your calendar right now, right? You have to participate in Make a Will month. It is a can't miss plan giving success for most organizations, and it is a great time to be thinking about it. And usually your calendar is pretty dead that time anyway. Really, really excellent. Make a will month, right? Uh, a small echo to National Estate Planning Awareness to Make a Will month is National Estate Planning Awareness Week, which falls in mid-October. Look, if you're only going to do one, do Make a Will month, but you'll get benefit out of doing two. And then end of year, we're right back on the smart cash gift, right? Oh, do you have any appreciated stock? It's a great time to give this away and lock in those tax gains. Oh, do you have any money in your donor advised fund you want to give? Oh, do you have to make a required minimum distribution? These are the times you can get these much bigger gifts from the same donors, right? So, really, really good questions. Lisa asks a question about bunching. We'll come back to that, Lisa, if we have time. Bunching means giving multiple gifts in one year or sort of larger gifts one year and then chunking that out over 2 or 3 years. It's a really good theory. I think we'll see how many people actually do it. So I think 2026 we'll learn a lot about bunching behavior and we'll see whether it happens. All right. Got to know your election dates, right? And you may not be in one of these states, but boy, if you have a lot of Texas donors or you have a lot of liberal California donors, we have to know these things, right? You can approach this a few different ways depending on your location. We can do more giving asks earlier, right? If you're nonprofits in a state with a competitive primary race, you want to make sure you know about the primary race and not just the general election race, right? And of course, we're probably not having a gala on November 3rd, right? We're probably not doing that. We're probably not even sending any fundraising asks on election day, but we're probably not having any community events when people are going to have to go out, be out voting and might be online for a long time. Okay, here's some primary dates that you should just make a note of. March 3rd, Texas. Texas has two fascinating primaries, one on the Democratic side, one on the Republican side. We expect really big turnout there. North Carolina, I think the Republican primary there is more important. Ohio, another big primary date. May 16th and June 27th. Fascinating primary in Louisiana, where Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican who voted for the impeachment of Donald Trump, is being primaried from the right. May 16th is the closed primary date, and June 27th is in the event of no one reaching 50%, there is a runoff vote on June 27th. So that will be really interesting as well. June 2nd, the primary in California. There's no Senate race open, I think, in California right now. But there will be a very competitive open seat primary for the gubernatorial seat, which is likely to be held by a Democrat. So there's a whole bunch of Democrats fighting over that right now. You'll see big turnout and a lot of focused attention on that on June 2nd. August 4th in the great state of Michigan. I think Gary Peters is retiring, and so that is opening up there. And that's what you got, right? So these are some of the big dates. Maybe you don't have any donors there, but you should keep an eye on it, right? Especially Texas and California. These are big states where you're going to have a lot of donors if you're a national organization. All right. Step 5. AI is just getting better all the time. And as you are trying to get up to speed on tax changes, et cetera, and smart gifts, et cetera, it's one of the learning time, right? The value of learning, of blocking off learning time for professional development. A quick way to do this, and even easier if you're a one-person shop and you don't get the benefit of having 5 smart colleagues around, like many of us do, is to practice talking about non-cash gifts using AI. It's a really great avenue. A Stanford study found that students working with AI-assisted tutors achieve mastery more often than those without AI assistance. A basic version is role play donor conversations through ChatGPT. An advanced version is building an in-house gift tutor for yourself. You can probably do this in an hour. It's very impressive. You can also use FreeWill's free AI tool called Willy, which is willy.freewill.com, to create non-cash giving talking points and practice with a colleague. Step 6, don't neglect your small dollar donors. So we are going to see a bunch of participation rates increase in 2026. I mean, it's a good sign. Still small dollars, but increase, right? So we want our small dollar donors, we want to then move them into a bigger giving category, right? So A, we can pivot to a different giving type, you just introduce the benefits of non-cash gifts, or we can cast a wide net with planned giving. But we want to start involving our small dollar donors more. We've had a 8-year decline in small dollar donors, in part because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And now you have that above the line deduction, the first thousand. And so we just want that participation. We want people to start engaging, and then we'll move them up the ladder in different ways to give and get them in planned gifts as well. You can educate donors on how they can make a greater impact, et cetera, right? So don't forget our small dollar donors. Seven, excuse me, QCDs. This is the year of QCDs. We have this huge bump in senior deductions. It's going to make this even more important. You're going to have fewer seniors itemizing. This 2026 is the QCD year, right? They are not impacted by the new 0.5% AGI floor. AGI is adjusted gross income. It means if you don't give at least 0.5% of your adjusted gross income and you're an itemizer, you don't get any tax benefit. QCDs are like a secret pathway around that, right? The year of QCDs. They offer donors age 70 and a half and older a direct way to give. And of course, they satisfy your required minimum distribution. They can also, this is incredibly important, they can help lower Medicare premiums. They can help lower taxable Social Security benefits. I mean, this is just a win-win-win-win-win for seniors. And by the way, there's just more seniors than there were last year, right? That's how demographics and aging work. So super, super important. I don't even know that Congress knows that they did this, but it is a huge advantage for seniors. You want to promote these as a penalty-free workaround for donors who feel boxed in, right? You want to target supporters over 70 with an educational outreach. You want to include QCD options on your ways to give and your donate page. You might want to have a call out that says like, hey, are you 70 and a half or older? Give directly from your IRA to maximize your impact and minimize your taxes. Step 8, private foundations. They have more money and you might have more problems, right? An estimated 1.7 trillion sits in private foundations and DAFs. The MacArthur Foundation is increasing grants. The Pivotal Ventures is launching a new fund. Bloomberg Philanthropies is doing more. Everyone's trying to step up in the absence of federal governments, right? Freedom Together Foundation is doubling grant making to 10%. And the Transit Center is spending its $69 million endowment within 12 years. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is increasing its payout rate. Global Giving is launching emergency fundraising, et cetera, et cetera. This is grant writing and grant seeking, not just grant writing, is going to be one of the areas where AI is going to be most useful. If you haven't already, make sure you type in grantassistant.ai, go check that out. Really fascinating if you do grants, right? If you don't do grants, good area to start exploring. Some of you won't be a good fit, but if you do grants, go check out grantassistant.ai. All right, we're rolling through because we only have a little bit of time left. Donor advised funds, right? Year of QCDs and the year of donor advised funds. The easiest way to secure DAF gifts is to promote them far and wide. The simple trick takes 30 seconds to implement and is wildly effective. In all of your emails and your pieces of direct mail, include this magic sentence. Will you chip in today to support X? This is not the magic sentence. This is the magic sentence. Note, many people choose to give from their assets, stocks, gifts from their IRA, cryptocurrency, and grants from their donor advised funds to see even larger tax savings, right? Why does this work? It reminds people of their assets. So even your cash gifts get bigger because people are reminded of their assets and they have that anchor point. And also you're going to get a bunch more of these gifts that are larger, sometimes by a factor of 10 or 50. Super, super, super important. Okay, that is what we have for you today. A couple of quick resources. First, if you haven't already, oops, just making a small check here. Great. Thank you, Phoebe. Phoebe has dropped a survey in the chat. Please take a minute and just click on that right now, right? That is the first thing in there is we're going to send a copy of James by Percival Everett to 20 people as a gift. We would love for you to have a little bit of relaxing, fun, great literature over the holidays. So please, please, please fill that out. Second of all, we have created a new resource for you, which is how you can talk to donors about the new tax rules in 2026. What does it include? Plain language, right? Normal people speak for donors who itemize and take a standard deduction. How to talk about non-cash giving options like the QCDs, like the donor advised funds, et cetera, under the new law. So it is called Key Tax Changes Impacting Philanthropy in 2026. We will send this to you in a follow-up email. So if you fill out the survey, we'll make sure to get that to you. You can, by the way, of course, share it widely with both your local associations and inside your organization. Next, on Tuesday, January 13th, which is the next time we're going to see each other. It's almost a month away. That's terrible, but I'll miss you. But we have some holidays to celebrate, et cetera, et cetera. So we are starting off 2026 with what I think will be an unbelievably incredible webinar with our dear friend, Dr. Russell James. It's some brand new presentation that he's put together. And the title of it is 10 Moves That Lead to Transformational Gifts, Research and Real World Practice. And it will be led by our dear friend, Dr. Russell James, who is astonishing and wonderful. If you haven't had a chance to hang out with Russell, please, please come. And that's what we got. The other thing in the survey, if you are interested, is there's a sort of special element there where if you're interested in getting a one-on-one meeting to either hear about AI grant writing or to hear about leveling up your plan giving in 2026 or to hear about how to do a lot more with QCDs, stocks, and donor advised funds, each of those options is in there. So please just do it, right? Even if you schedule a meeting, you can schedule the meeting directly. Even if you schedule it for the first week of January when you're just trying to recover from the holiday stupor, get on it. I think it's really important that you at least understand what technology other organizations are using and what other technology your donors are going to be seeing as they just interact in the world. Okay, we only have 2 more minutes. So that is it for our slides. Here's what I want to say in the last 2 minutes. It's been a hell of a year. It's been a hard one. It's been ups and downs. You guys have done just an unbelievably incredible job. I'm on many and many of your email lists. I read lots of your websites. I see lots of your work. The fundraising this year has just been better than it's ever been. And it's not an accident that people were more successful than they've ever been, right? It's not an accident that Giving Tuesday was way better than last year. It's not an accident that you are looking 2 weeks left to go in the year and more confident about hitting your goals than we have been at any point in the 12 months. Next year is going to be a crazy year. And it's going to be a lot of hard work. There's going to be a lot of adjustments for a lot of donors, but it's also going to be a pretty good year, right? We're just going into it with some really big tailwinds in terms of economic activity, in terms of demographics, et cetera. Hopefully, not as much sort of crazy changes from the federal government level. People are going to be a lot more focused on the midterm elections. And so it should be a really good year. But we're really looking forward to spending it together. We're really looking forward to navigating some of these tax changes together. Really looking forward to navigating the continued Great Wealth Transfer. Really looking forward to navigating the evolution of AI. I mean, we haven't even talked about things like AI songs topping the charts in 2025 and all that. And so it's just such a blessing for us to not just me and not just Jenny, but the whole team really putting these together and be able to spend time with you. And it just means so much. So I just want to say a really big thank you on behalf of all 230 something FreeWillians in the US and Canada and Pakistan, Brazil, in Mexico. Just a really, really big thank you. I also want to do a special shout out to my dear colleague Phoebe, who's on the call, who's put a ton of work. I don't know exactly how many webinars we did this year, but I think it's something like 38, 36 maybe, which is just an incredible number. And there's a lot of behind the scenes uh, work to make me look smart and to get you all the most important research. And a huge amount of that is Phoebe. So um, shout out to her. If you see her on the streets of Austin, give her a high five. Happy Hanukkah to those of you celebrating. I think this is night 3 tonight. Tell me if that's right. Merry Christmas to those of you celebrating soon. Merry Orthodox Christmas to you all celebrating on this January 6th, I think, before we come back. And have a great holiday season. 7th, thank you. Thank you, thank you. 7th is Orthodox Christmas. Um, Look, been a great year, been a wild year. Looking forward to 2026 beyond together. And just thank you again for everything y'all do. Really, really appreciate it.